there's so much love right now in the chat box to see the two of you guys together, and we're gonna go and break it all down.
As I wrote on X early this morning, Sports Talk Radio on live stream, the way it should be bleeping done. That's what we do here.
Well, we try, Lee, more than anything else, we try to get good information out to the people. That's one thing we've always tried to do.
Okay, here we go. Here comes Fans Forum, John. Ready, set, go.
Okay, let's go here to Greg to kick us off. He goes, Lee, I'm surprised that any of the NFL's struggling franchises are not considering relocating to San Diego. Any thoughts on expansion or another team coming to San Diego? Thanks for a great show.
Thank you, Greg. Plain and simple, there's no place to play. That's the biggest issue. We have no plot of land to build a new stadium, and who would pay for the new stadium? You know, the formula that could have kept the Chargers here was city county contribution of like $375 million apiece, Spanos contribution of like $360 million, the NFL G3 fund contribution, which was in excess of $350 million. That could have been the $1.2 billion, and Spanos never went to the table because he always wanted to go to the city of Los Angeles. Now that land is gone, the stadium is gone. Snapdragon Stadium is not an NFL-ready stadium by any stretch of the imagination, and to build a new stadium, you have to find land, and then you're going to have to pay for that. And there's nobody to relocate. Jacksonville is got this extension for massive renovation. Buffalo is building a brand new stadium across the street in Erie County in upstate New York. There are no franchises to be had, and I don't see the NFL expanding, and the expansion price, John Kentera, would be unbelievably high on top of what you have to spend to build a stadium. So I don't see it happening in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Lee, it's the same old theory. Same thing with the land down in Midway, okay? You're not going to get an NBA or NHL team without an arena, okay? An arena is not going to be built unless you're guaranteed an NHL or NBA team. It's the same thing with football. They're not going to come unless there's a stadium, and the city's not going to be able to get anybody until they build the stadium. It's that simple, and that's where we're at right now, unfortunately.
Greg, sorry for the bad news, but you asked. We just gave you the answer. Next question, John Raleigh.
All right, next question. Let's go here to Chris. He goes, saw Coach and John, everyone into the pattern. Coach, I remember calling into your show at 11 o'clock as a teenager, and I'm 48. Pete Carroll back at SC. My question is not if he will coach again, but why the hell are you, Lee, not teaching a motivational sports class, damn it?
Well, we should get somebody from San Diego State to invite us in as guest lecturers. I'm sure we could tell the students out there the prospects of working in the industry and what we've experienced. But hey, I think Coach and I both had a tremendous run. I think we both kind of privately wish we were still having the ability to do it, but you need a station, you need good ownership, and I don't see that out there, and I don't like the whole landscape. But that's another topic. John's agreed to come back. We're going to do a thing on the history of Sports Talk Radio, but I think we like interacting with each other. You know, there's an awful lot of verbal gunfire. This is an example of what used to happen in our office, or what would happen
in the hallways.
In the hallways, yeah.
In between commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, Lee, two things that I would tell any young broadcaster. You better be willing to work nights and weekends.
And you better be willing to work in Pocatello, Idaho, or Las Cruces, Mexico.
Without a doubt. And I was lucky. I was able to start in San Diego and stay my entire career in San Diego. But really, I think what you got to sacrifice, you're out at night all the time, you know, doing talk shows or calling ball games, and you got to be willing to work weekends. If you're not willing to do those two things, probably need to look into another industry.
Yeah, but everybody that's in it wants to do it, and that's why you do it. I started in small market Appalachia, and I did high school football, and we made it a big thing on radio, and high school basketball, and we did high school baseball on AM radio and Summer League American Legion baseball. I was doing games all the time, but that's where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be. So I've still got all the friends that I made in Logan, Ohio, in Appalachia, that are still there at the same station working, and the guys I hired are the ones that wound up buying the radio station and owned it. Next question, John Riley.
Okay, we're going to intersperse some of the love in between the questions. So here's a couple of them, and it's from Casey. Great to see Coach John Kentera on here with Hacksaw, and then Drew says legends, Hacksaw and Coach, and there's a bunch more. We're going to get them all in, but let's go back to Casey's question. NL West race is going to be exciting run to the end, and I think the Dodgers need to stick with Kopech as the closer the rest of the way. What do you guys think?
Well, I maintain that, and they moved Kopech to closer and got 2 saves in 3 days. They're going to have to limit his ops because he throws 100 miles an hour, and I don't think on back-to-back days you want him throwing 45 pitches at 100 miles an hour. My biggest concern, they're going to hit, and they just may have to slug their way through this playoff series. I just don't know if you can trust this starting rotation, especially in postseason play, because you're not going to be playing the White Sox or some of these other substandard teams, Kentera, in postseason play. So who do the Dodgers trust? Glass now doesn't look like he's 100%. There's a wear and tear factor and an elbow history with him. Yamamoto has yet to throw a rehab game, and he's been out an extended period of time. He'd probably be on an innings limit. As much as I respect Kershaw, he's just not the same. You never know from start to start what you're going to get. And I don't know that I can send Buehler out there. Heart is willing. His body is not. I mean, to me, they've got a lot of issues in that rotation.
Well, right now, Gavin Stone, the young guy, is pitching really, really well. And he'd be a guy that'd be one of the first 3 starters in the postseason. They're hoping Glasnow will come back. They're hoping Yamamoto will come back. Kershaw, we know his history in postseason play. They just wait to hit that fastball, and they look for that ball inside when he's pitching, and they go to it. It'll be interesting if he changes how he goes about pitching in the postseason. If they look at his numbers and look at how he attacks hitters in the postseason, they may want to rearrange his game plan. As far as the Dodgers and Kopech's amazing. He finally gave up a run, actually, the other night, but he's been amazing. I mentioned earlier they got Ryan Brazier back. Phillips looks like he's back on track. He gave up that home run the other night, but that was the first run he'd given up in the month of August. And Vesia, the kid from San Diego, has pitched really well. So their bullpen has been pretty good. But again, you got to get through the first 4 or 5 innings in the postseason, and we'll have to wait and see. Postseason is a lot different than it is during the regular season, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there's no 31 and 100 White Sox teams in the first wild card round that you're going to face. We move on. Next question here.
Okay, there's a bunch of love here. This is from Carl. Says, wow, 2 legends together. John says, welcome, Coach. We need to make your presence a habit. Let's go here to Callan. He says, always a treat when Saw and Coach get together for a show. Great to see you both. Gary says, such a treat because Coach would fill in for Saw back in the day. Great to hear you guys bounce topics off each other. I feel like I'm backing my hot car on the 5805 merch parking lot at 4 o'clock over here. Great show.
Thank you for the kind compliments. And I think we're cut from the same cloth. We believe in the same thing. We like working together. We would argue with each other in the hallway sometimes, and obviously in staff meetings. I never went to staff meetings. I don't read bloody memos. I don't care what management thinks. But anyhow, we had a good time. So
hey, I got to say something about that, about filling in for you. You know, when I first started, I started on the high school show in 1990 on Saturday mornings, and it became really popular. We moved it to Friday nights in 91. And then I started doing fill-in shows, mostly for Steve and Chet. And, I was doing Aztec basketball and doing more and more. And as I was gaining knowledge and experience, every once in a while, I'd fill in for Lee. And then when Lee would go on a vacation, I'd get an opportunity to fill in for an entire week. And Lee, I never told you this. I'll tell it to you right now. It was always a great honor because I knew all of Southern California was listening, and it really enhanced my reputation as a talk show host, being able to, be the guy filling in for you. And it was, to this day, I'm very honored because I took a lot of pride. That drive time show in those days on 690, I took a lot of pride in knowing what you'd done and, tried to live up to what you'd expect out of it. And management got to the point where I was the only guy that got to fill in for you. And that's a feather in my cap to this day.
Thank you. I think the most unique thing, the first time I met Peter Seidler, and of course he had come from the Dodger hierarchy, the Dodger family, and I had never met him. And at the introductory press conference where he was announced to be the majority owner coming in with Ron Fowler, he came up to me at the end of the press conference, said, Hacksaw. He shook my hand. He said, I listened to you all the time when I was in Los Angeles. He said, I couldn't wait to get out of the office to make sure that I was on the 405 at 4 p.m. in Gridlock so I could hear the best 15 minutes of radio. That was absolutely funny and stunning. And then he said, when you went to Sirius XM, After I had been bought out twice by 690 and then 1090, and went to Sirius XM, and I did 3 years of weekend shows on the Home Plate Baseball channel. He said, I'd be on the freeway and I'd be listening to the Home Plate channel because I want to hear what you had to say nationally. He said, you sure did incite Yankee and Met fans and Dodger fans and Giant fans a lot. So that was so cool to see somebody of this magnitude say, hey, we're listening to this loudmouth down in San Diego do sports talk radio.
Well, 690 was a legendary station, Lee, and there'll never be anything like that on the West Coast again. It was a unique cast of characters. I mean, all of us guys on that station were everybody's a little bit different, which made it good. We didn't always agree with one another. Like we used to get in some pretty interesting arguments in the hallway.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to do a special show just on the history of sports talk radio. So save the good stories for that special show. Okay, John, next topic on the table here.
Let's move on. And yeah, there's still so much love here, but let's go here to Tim. And he says, Lee, Coach John, if Tatis and Darvish come back, can this Padre team really do some damage?
Oh, I totally think so. I think there's an intangible, and we haven't talked about it, John. There's an intangible of why the Padres have 33 come from behind wins and 8 or 9 walk-off wins. They, as a batting order, don't strike out. They always put the ball in play, whether that's Luis Arise swinging at everything in this area code, whether it's a strike or not, and getting base hits, or the kid 2, Jackson Merrill, with a critical long ball, what Machado can do when he gets hot, what Profar's done in a career season. They don't strike out. They don't kill rallies. They always put the ball in play, and all kinds of weird things can happen when the ball is put in play. I think that's an intangible nobody pays attention to. I know you're a stat junkie and a stat geek and OPS and all that razzmatazz. But so you got that, and obviously you got, if this starting staff can be frontline healthy, man, they got four or five real trustworthy starters, and there's 7 deep in the bullpen that I will trust for the most part as long as they're not overused. But I think the lack of strikeouts to me is a big, big intangible.
Well, I think you got to give Victor Rodriguez, the hitting coach, a lot of credit. He got these guys to buy into that. Lee, when I was coaching college baseball and high school baseball, there's nothing that upset me more than strikeouts. As a player growing up, back in the 60s and 70s, when you struck out, it was an embarrassment when you had to walk back to that dugout. But now baseball's allowed the strikeout to be a big part of the game. Well, the Padres have eliminated that this year. I mean, they're the least team that strikes out the least in baseball right now. They put the ball in play. When the ball's put in play, you may hit into a few more double plays because you're putting the ball in play. But you know what? I'll take my chances on that. But to get into the question regarding Darvish and Tatis, I think this team, if they get them back and they're who they're supposed to be, great. That's a big a shot in the arm. But at the end of the day, whether or not those 2 guys come back and are effective or not, this team is really pretty good. And they've got a good chemistry. You'd like to have Tatis probably out there in right field, covers more ground than David Peralta, and going to be probably a little bit more power coming from his bat. And Darvish, hopefully he could come back. But hey, whether they come back or not, if they don't come back, this team still got a damn good chance to do something damage in the playoffs, I think.
And all the positives we talked about, Preller's best job ever in acquisitions, and obviously what Schultz has done from a culture standpoint, the players, the roster. You talked hitting coach. John and I have talked about Ruben Niebla. I mean, you talk about an intangible MVP, what he's done with a huge group of those pitchers to dial them in to their strength and make them better. I think he's done a phenomenal job.
Well, I think Ruben's done a real good job. It's his 3rd year, and I think he's done a really good job. The other thing, and people they'll talk more about it, about Victor Rodriguez, but Ruben Niebla and Victor Rodriguez worked in the same organization.
Yeah, they're in Cleveland.
I mean, they came from Cleveland. Okay. So I mean, I got to believe that when a job opened up and Victor Rodriguez was trying to get this job, I got to believe Ruben Niebla raised his hand and said, hey, man, this guy can really coach. Well, you know what? This guy's got hitters buying in. You know what? When you're a big league hitting coach, you're not going to necessarily change a whole lot with a guy. They're going to be fine-tuned. You're going to watch a guy hit for a period of time, and then you're going to make some suggestions maybe, or he may develop a relationship with you where he comes to you, and it's better that way because the players are more open-minded. But he's got this entire team buying in, And you got a good group of veterans like Solano and Peralta. They certainly can help the case. You got Machado, who's now swinging the bat well. Profar is a good team guy, is always trying to get a little bit better. So you've got some top-notch baseball IQ guys on this roster right now.
And I think what Niebla has done by looking at video and just pinpointing what Cease was not doing very well early, what he's done to readjust Musgrove, what he did with the refugee relief ace who was in Mexico and Japan, and what they did with Robert Suarez, and then how he's helped these young guys. Morjon, prime example. I mean, I think Niebla, from a pitching perspective, has just really done a lot of things.
We could do a whole segment on Padre pitching and bringing up the thing about Morjon. He's finally healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's been a big problem. And Robert Suarez was never healthy last year. You go back, to his first year 3 years ago, he was very healthy and pitched very, very well. Last year, he was never healthy. And this year, he's been absolutely fantastic.
Yep. Next question, John Riley. Fans Forum. Hope you're enjoying this because we're kind of melting down John's computer here.
It's all good. There's lots of love. So here's a comment here from Neil, and he says, Coach and Saw, all is right in the world again. Emmanuel asks, Lee, do you think Ohtani would be able to accomplish a 50 home run, 50 stolen base season?
I think it's a viable goal to get to because we still got another month plus a week to accomplish that. And as long as he does not get hurt and he's only DHing every day, he's not out in the field pounding. I think 50-50 is reasonable. And I flip back because I talk to agents all the time. And I just asked them their perspective of this player or that player. And what they told me universally, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. You think about what Ohtani accomplished with the Angels, DHing 6 days a week and going through all the physicality of being a DH, all the video he had to study of the upcoming pitchers he'd have to face, and then the preparation added on when he was going to throw on that seventh day and Sunday, and then what he'd do in the bullpen sessions. That's a phenomenal workload. I mean, Ohtani to me this might be a once-in-a-lifetime player we'll never see somebody take on. I mean, they can say about Babe Ruth, but that was a whole different aura and era. This is a much more demanding aura and era that Ohtani's accomplishing greatness.
Well, we talked about Ohtani earlier, Lee. Pretty amazing guy. This may be his best year to go 50-50. And the reason I say that, being a stolen base guy, it takes a toll on your body. Now, the thing that I like about Ohtani is that he goes feet first. And he knows how to slide properly. He's not going head first. He's not putting his fingers and hands and neck and face exposed and going into the head first. I don't know why guys dive head first, to be honest with you. Going back into the bag's one thing, but going full speed head first, you're an IL move waiting to happen, in my opinion. But I think as the Dodgers wind down this season, unless he really wants to get a personal record and try to, he's close to 50 homers and 50 stolen base, I would think he would start backing off on stealing bases because at some point in time, you're going to twist an ankle. You could be out a week. Do they really want that getting closer to the playoffs? I don't know. But the factor, and they talked about this with Acuna Jr., you got that new rule where you can only go over there twice. That's obviously played a part in why the run game has come back. And I don't want to diminish Acuna or Ohtani, but it wasn't the same for, Ricky Henderson or Lou Brock or Maury Wills in the day. It's a different game now. So some of these numbers are, I don't want to say watered down, but they are a little bit skewed, I think.
Okay. We move on. Fans Forum continues. You got questions. Man, do we have a few people here? We just might be here till Tuesday night.
Yeah, we'll be here for a while. Callan asks, he goes, if time allows, I'd love to hear some stories that Lee and Coach can share from their time at 690. I was too young to remember 690, but loved each of your time on 1090 and 97.3.
Okay, well, I would like to save the real juicy stories when we do the whole segment. All I'll say is we worked for a very unique owner, John Lynch Sr. He is the father of the legendary NFL safety Hall of Famer, John Lynch Jr., who's now the general manager of the 49ers. I was the first hire. I was in Phoenix doing Arizona State Sun Devil football. I pioneered sports talk radio at KTAR, and they called me and asked me to come to San Diego as the first increment. And the hook was, you'll be the lead talk show host, an afternoon drive, and you're going to be the voice of the Chargers. And I said, okay. Well, we worked for a guy that was a visionary. And he had this idea of sports talk radio, even though he didn't have any baseball play-by-play. And usually baseball play-by-play is the foundation for a sports talk station. Well, he tried. But he had this vision and he put it together. And I laugh now because I have great respect for what he did, the risks he took financially. It's a very expensive format to run. But I also laugh, the all-star lineup they put together wasn't by any damn blueprint. They just kind of stumbled into it. They stumbled into him as a high school guru. And maybe John wasn't polished on radio, but John was damn good. And they stumbled into Jim Rome. They didn't know what he could become. And they stumbled into the mixed bag of Hartman and Chet Forty or Hartman and Philly Billy. And it just kind of came together. But John Lynch was a visionary, and he's had a longer relationship with John Lynch Sr. than I have. And I got great regard for the man, what he did.
Was your first day officially at August 1st, 1987?
It was.
Well, I was working there prior to you, but I wasn't necessarily on the payroll. My actual first start date, even though I'd been there since like March, my first day full time, August 1st, 1987. So you and I actually officially started on
we
the
walked
same
in
day,
the door.
even though I was there a few months earlier.
We walked in the door, and at that time, it was 69 extra gold.
That's right.
It was rock and roll Wolfman Jack radio. And I felt, holy cow, did I make a mistake doing this?
Bloomin' Harrigan in the morning.
It was 69 extra gold, rock and roll from American Graffiti days. And we were the only two guys outside of the owner who was a sports fan. And we were like in a closet by ourselves, and nobody wanted us around and didn't want to work with us because they knew as this thing took off that the rock and roll format was eventually going to go away. But I'll tell you what, I had a great time with Wolfman Jack. He was my lead-in.
Yep.
His name was Jack Smith. And Wolfman had an entourage like you wouldn't freaking believe. And they brought all this food in every afternoon. And he was doing American Graffiti from the movie, that music, those people. It was really different.
Well, that's when he came to the station, but a lot of times he did the show from his home
in Los Angeles.
But we would have to call him to make sure he was up, ready to do the show, because he slept in until early afternoon.
So it was unique. But we'll save the rest of the really juicy stories because there's some real cool stuff that we'll tell you about. John Riley, next topic.
Okay, we got some more love here. This is from Frank. He says, great to see Hacksaw Coach still bringing it. Ismail says, I really miss you guys being on the radio, and says further, sorry, I took you guys for granted. These new sports talk radio shows are horrible.
Well, at the time we were doing sports talk radio, all we were doing was grinding every day, covering press conferences, talking about the teams in town, the topics on the table, as I would describe it. We had no knowledge that we were building greatness. I don't think we ever realized it. And then as the years became decades, and then when we both got bought out and we went off into other things, and me doing this, which stunned me was a number of people nationwide, Coach, that would come to me, and I email, and I talk to people in radio all over the country. And a lot of them become friends. And the common theme was, how the hell did you guys ever put this formula together? And I said, it's probably by accident. But we just accumulated this talent, and we all came at it from different angles. And next thing you know, we have a very successful station, which made the ending so bloody hard and created so much bitterness when corporate radio kind of took us all out because it was so expensive to run, and their profit margins weren't as big as they wanted it to be, and ruined the bloody format. But we were working so hard, I don't think we realized the iconic thing that we were formulating.
Well, Lee, I think more than anything else, and I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for you, and I can speak for a lot of the guys that we worked with. I mean, when the mic went on, we talked. When the mic went off, we kept working. Okay?
We kept talking.
Well, we kept talking, but what I mean by that, I mean, if I was doing a night show, I would wake up in the morning after, getting home at midnight, and I'd get right to work, and I'd try to get a little breather, maybe early afternoon, because I was coming in and following you normally, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, depending if you're going 4 to 8 or 3 to 7 in those days. And I mean, it was just like one day after another. We spent 7-8 hours. Early in our career, Lee, we didn't have the internet.
Mhm.
We had to make a lot of phone calls.
It's all networking.
We had to get into the ballpark, going to batting practice before a talk show at night, going to a game on Saturday when you're not working, trying to build relationships. It was more than just sitting there popping off for 3 or 4 hours and not having any accountability. And I think one of the things that, when we do what we do, we're going to irritate some people in the organizations from time to time. You probably more than me.
Oh,
I know
You
Dean
think?
Spanos is on your Christmas card list, but at the end of the day, if you're going to say something on the air, you
Back it
better
up.
be at batting practice and be there. If somebody wants to come up and talk to you about what you had to say, nowadays, a lot of these guys that are on sports talk radio, they pop off. They know very little, number one, but number two, they don't go down. They have no relationships whatsoever.
concur wholeheartedly. The industry has changed. But thank you for the compliment. And when we do this history of sports talk radio, you'll hear stuff you probably never, ever heard. We might even get in trouble doing it that way. John Riley, next topic.
Okay, well, just a quick shout out here. Bonjour de Canada from Revolution. But let's go here. Like David says, I love John Kentera and Bill Warndell.
Just like Hacksaw, I can tell that right now. Go ahead.
Okay, and then Gary says, one good thing about the Chargers is that there's no way that many people in the stands to see them fail. Theme game at SoFi, sit anywhere you want day.
Plenty of good tickets available.
Yeah, I don't see myself going to SoFi Stadium any soon to watch the Chargers.
No, it's much more convenient to sit at home and root for Justin Herbert. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving Dean Spanos $1 of my hard-earned money after what he did to our community.
I look at it this way, Lee. I was born and raised a Charger fan. It was the only AFL team. I followed the AFL as a kid. Keith Lincoln, Lance Allward, John Hadel, and those guys. Now when I watch them play, I hope they go 0-17.
Well said. Glad you don't hold any grudges.
No grudges here.
I'll
All
sign
right.
that memo.
Okay, let's move on. Josh says, love listening to both of you while I lived in SoCal from 1996 to 2005. Still listening to you in Michigan.
Josh, hail to the victors. Do you think you'll like NCAA probation post Harbaugh? That's going to be messy. We haven't heard the end of that story, I guarantee you.
Obviously, he likes what's going on in San Diego sports-wise rather than Michigan. He probably had to go there. Maybe married a lady from Ann Arbor.
How's those winters in Michigan? Hey, Josh, thanks for joining us. Next question.
Okay, Casey has one here asking about USC. He goes, how do you guys think USC will do in their move to the Big Ten Conference, and where do you think they finish in the Big Ten?
I like Lincoln Riley, smart, bright light guy, knows recruits, got a ton of guys in the transfer portal. Yeah, there is no Caleb Williams, but they've got a load of offensive linemen. They are deep with transfers. They got one great wide receiver, and they've got one of the best defensive tackles in the country that nobody pays attention to, in Bear Alexander. I think USC is going to do well. I think it's going to be a horrid season for Deshaun Foster. I think the post-Chip Kelly era is going to be a disaster at UCLA. And, way early in this podcast, we talked about the death of the Pac-12. I keep hearing an undercurrent of theme that Cal and Stanford of the opinion that maybe we shouldn't have done this going to the ACC. I think UCLA is going to regret this. I bet UCLA may try to opt out within a couple of years because I think this is going to be horrid. So what you've got, Coach Kentera, is you get Stanford, Cal, UCLA come back. You got Oregon State, Washington State. That gives you 5. That conference has to get to 8 by 2026. So you take San Diego State, maybe you take Boise State. When the TV contracts expire in the Mountain West, there's no exit fee once that happens. So the Aztecs, Boise State, maybe Fresno, maybe Vegas, they become free agent schools. So if you got 5 in place in the rebuilt pack, and then you take the Mountain West, you can get to 8, maybe get to 9, maybe even get to 10. I think that's what's going to happen. My private concern is that the Aztecs and the Run-On Rebels, Fresno State, not so much Boise, I don't know that they would have the pot of gold to raise for NIL money to compete at that Pac-12 or Pac-8 or Pac-10 level. That's the only thing that really worries me.
Well, I don't think a lot of schools are going to be able to do that, Lee. I mean, I see college football down the road, unless they get this NIL under control and transfer portal under control. I could see a lot of football programs dropping in the next 5 years. You know, the Texas El Pasos, the New Mexicos, the New Mexico States of that ilk. I could see them just dropping out. And then you're going to have like the top, 60 teams. You're going to have 60 Division I college football programs. As far as UCLA, I definitely see UCLA coming back. I think this is going to be a disaster for them football-wise. I don't think they're ready to compete. I think Chip Kelly let that thing fall so bad, and he got out when the getting's good.
He was told to get out.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're a head coach, okay? Why would you want to go become an offensive coordinator? I know it's at Ohio State, but I mean, you're a head coach. And maybe they'll win a national title. He'll get another head coaching job. But, I think his days as a head coach are come and gone. He did a very, very poor job at UCLA.
And he was given all the resources to do it.
He doesn't deserve another opportunity to be a head coach. As far as SC can do whatever they want because they're a private school. But I think behind the scenes, there's probably a certain portion of the people at SC not real happy about this. I mean, you change the history of college football.
I concur with you. And privately, I hate to say this, but I'll say it. I hope they get their butts kicked in the Big Ten because they deserve it for what they did to something that was real special to you, your father, his father, the generations of the greatness of the Pac-8 that became the Pac-10, that became the Pac-12. That goes back to 1915. And SC and UCLA pulled the underpinnings of the conference out by taking a money grab to go east. If they all got their brains blown out, that'd be okay by me. I hope they come back. I don't think they're all going to come back, but I think you and I are on the same page that a bunch of them say, oh, this is not good. This is not going to work. We're going to wind up coming back. John
Okay.
Riley.
Keep going here. And Blake says, great to see and hear you guys. I miss the mighty 690 days in programs. Michael says, Coach, do you envision yourself going back to the radio anytime soon? Or are you even interested in going back to that platform?
Well, you always pick up the phone if somebody calls you, but nobody's calling. And the way sports talk radio is going, not only locally, but nationally, those opportunities are few and far between. I'm not leaving San Diego. If one of the stations called, you're always going to listen, but I'm enjoying my life a great deal. I'm doing my own little podcast and hanging out with you and Saw. Life is good. And if I go back to work, great. If not, maybe I'll find something else in the sports industry.
It's different. I didn't leave it bitter. All my friends who are out, and I think Coach Kentera would agree with me, there's a lot of really good broadcasters who are not working in radio. Just in San Diego County alone, there's a lot of guys that left it kind of bitter. I didn't leave bitter. I left kind of disappointed. They took care of me financially. That's okay. The world changed, and now we're doing this. And this is the most amazing thing, that I'm doing this modern day technology, and I still have my Royal manual typewriter in my garage, Coach. So it's just a different time and place. My only disappointment is corporate radio came in, ruined local radio, and ruined a lot of careers. And I just can't forgive the upper management people that did that, not just to me and you, but did it to all of our friends.
Yeah, I mean, the last stop I had, normally when you're number one in the market and you're the lowest paid guy on the totem pole, usually you're up for the employee of the year. Instead, I got a pink slip. And to this day, I have no idea why I got fired. It certainly didn't have anything to do with my ratings because they were top notch. And it certainly didn't have anything to do with me making too much money.
Yeah, concur with you. You got a pink slip. I got a brown envelope. Sign here. Make sure your office is cleared out within 2 days. Although I never parted badly with anybody who let me go. In fact, I'm still friends with the general managers that gave me the brown envelope to sign. But that being said, you made a mistake. You took talent off the air that shouldn't have been off the air. Same thing with him. But that's one man's opinion. John Riley.
All these street free agents. Okay, here's a three-parter here talking a little bit about soccer. We'll go to Neil first. And he says, how do you think the required Apple TV subscription to watch games will affect the San Diego FC fan base growth once they start? Jason says, soccer talk. San Diego is not and never will be a soccer town. We are a football and baseball town. Also, I can't fathom any other team than the Chargers being our football team at San Diego. No, thank you.
Okay, I'll just give you a quick response. We have enormous soccer following TV ratings.
Yep.
Whether that's Team USA or whether that's the creme de la creme, the World Cup. Phenomenal. If we had Major League Soccer and it was successful, and if you had sports talk radio that was willing to learn about soccer and actually do unique things as it relates to soccer. If I were king and I was doing my show, I'd cover everything, but I would also cover soccer a bit more extensively if we had MLS here or World Cup coming here or things of that nature. I think it can succeed if there is on-air media support. The subscription thing, the whole bloody world has gone to subscription, which kind of really bothers me. But I think it can be a success here if the product on the field is good, and if we have the right media helping cover it and telling the stories that need to be told.
Well, I think initially they're going to get a lot of love. Okay, I think the new MLS franchise, they're going to get a lot of love, but they better win. And, I think everybody will be a novelty to go out there as a media guy the first few times, but how many times are the media going to come back? It's kind of like going to a San Diego State football game. I go to those games, and aside from the people working, I never see anybody. I don't see TV guys. I don't see radio guys on Saturday night. I'm not even.
You're sitting next to me.
Yeah, I'm sitting next to you.
We're both free agents.
And the only other guys that are there are guys that have to be there because they're working. But, we care about what's going on in San Diego. We want to know. I think as far as subscriptions, I'm not going to. If they're on TV, I'm going to watch them. Okay. I'm not going to go out of my way to buy another subscription. I pay enough in cable TV to watch all the sports stations that I do. But I'm excited. I like soccer. I could sit here as a 6-year-old kid back in 1976. I went and saw Pelé play at Balboa Stadium. And when they helicoptered him to the middle of the field and played against the San Diego Jaws. But, soccer's a great sport. And like you said, for whether it's the men, the women, national teams, the Premier Soccer League, the ratings in San Diego are always way up there.
Yeah. World Cup. I love the World Cup. And I got exposed to it decades ago. And I saw Pele in 1972. The Meadowlands, New York Giants, New York Cosmos.
Yep.
72,000 fans. Couldn't believe it. And I didn't know anything about soccer. All I knew was how great he was. And I stood down there on the sidelines with the other media and just watched the magic of what he was. That's how I kind of got exposed to World Cup. And I just love the World Cup. And my co-host and I are the only two dumbasses that get up at 4:30 on Saturday morning to watch the English Premier League. And we are big EPL guys.
Big time. Yeah, I got the Apple TV subscription, so I'm going to definitely be watching.
John subscribes to everything.
Yeah, my wife and I were always like streaming stuff. Okay, Chris says, Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky of sports information sitting 3 feet apart. Then Al says, Dodgers are in trouble come playoffs.
Well, thank you for the compliment. We just approach Sports Talk Radio really, really different. You might call us dinosaurs. I might call us old school and experienced, and Dodgers could be in trouble. I mean, they got a month to get all this pitching staff healthy because I don't know who you can trust.
Well, I agree. I mean, in the playoffs, anything can happen. That's why I think the Padres got a really good shot. Dodgers on paper, they're supposed to win it. They got the best record in the National League, even though they've had all their injuries, but playoffs are completely different. And thank you for the nice compliment regarding Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky. And, I know we're going to do a show down the road about 690, but I got to mention one thing about Wayne Gretzky because, we carried the Kings, Lee, as you well know.
In the Stanley Cup run. And then we carried the Ducks in the Stanley Cup
I'll never forget. I was at home and Joe Tatino called me and he goes, you've got to get to the station in the next hour. He goes, we've talked to the Kings and they're going to be trading Wayne Gretzky. He goes, and you're going to go on and you're going to take phone calls about it. And I remember gobbling down my dinner and getting on the 5 freeway, getting off there at Pacific Highway, just with my little briefcase and running in, and took about 3 hours of phone calls about Wayne Gretzky getting traded to the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah. And I recall, because I covered hockey, I did a lot of hockey on my talk show because of the big signal that 690 had. And then because of all the content I did, hockey, we wound up with the LA Kings who were bouncing all over the radio dial. And one of my biggest thrills is the Gretzky era. When they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, I went on the road and I did my sports talk show. I told John Riley this. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I did my sports talk show sitting in the gondola at center ice overlooking old Maple Leaf Gardens. And then at the Montreal Forum, the historic home of the Bleu Blanc Rouge, when the Kings played the Canadiens in the NHL Finals. So, I mean, I cut my teeth. That's where I started my broadcasting career, was doing pro hockey, minor league hockey, and got me to Cleveland and Major League Hockey and all that. So, but the Gretzky era, that made them, and it made us as a station in the LA Orange County market. And then when the Kings left us, we got the Ducks. Paul Correa came. And where'd that wind up? Stanley Cup playoffs again. So it helped grow our signal and our content in those two markets. In addition, everything we were doing, Charger, Padre, Aztec related.
Lee, let's face it. Hockey players were the best dudes to interview. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember having Luke Robitaille on, Rob Blake. You mentioned Paul Correa, Timo Solani. We used to have those guys on a regular basis, and they were all great, man. I loved interviewing those hockey guys.
Okay, moving on. We got some more comments. Oh, this is another 690 question for you all. And this is from David. He says, talk about a Bill Warndell story at 690 or 1090.
Oh, gee, I'd like to hand that off and wait till we actually do the sports talk radio show. But Philly Billy came to San Diego after we had lost Chet 40. Chet had been paired with Steve Hartman. John Lynch, our owner at that time, knew of Chet 40, brought him in. I knew of Chet 40 and all the great things he had done on television as a producer for Monday Night Football. And I knew about his demise because of a gambling addiction. And I didn't know that it was going to work because I wasn't prejudging him. All I know is that he had a lot of problems. And he came in and he was so cool to be around and the stories he could tell. And we incorporated him 1 year as like the third man in the booth on our Charger broadcast. And we would go on the road and we would sit in the hotel lobby or at the dining room table in a corner by ourselves. And the team had had their big dinner. We were allowed to take part in it. And we sat in a corner and we'd sit there for hours and listen to Chet tell stories about where he had been and what he had done as a producer. And that included not only the greatest sporting events, not only including working with Howard Cosell, it included the crowning of the Queen of England, where they televised it for ABC. He did so many cool things. And then he obviously dropped dead of a heart attack. And they called me at 5 o'clock in the morning and said, Chet's passed away. Can you be the point man and make some contacts with the media and just give them some side stories? Because I had known him better. The only one better would have been Steve Hartman. So I did that. And then we said, how do you replace Chet 40? And I said, Philly Billy Warndell, a guy I had been using as an NFL draft expert, and he had worked freelance for Our Lads Draft Guide. I said, he's got a lot of the same ingredients as Chet. And Hartman had established his own persona, which was really cool. And he was an LA guy and he drew from LA. And it worked for 40 because you had loudmouth East Coast guy, older, versus young punk West Coast guy and Hartman. I said, we need another loudmouth East Coast guy. And Philly Billy was right there. And I told John Lynch, I said, you need to call this guy in Philly. I use him once a week in the NFL. He knows everybody everywhere. And he's got this bad accent. You can't understand him without a Philly cheesesteak sandwich in your hand. And so they hired Philly Billy. And Philly came in and he just kind of hit the floor running just like Chet. To me, it was a great success. And it was kind of by accident, but it was also by contact.
Well, I think I'm going to save a lot of my stories. I spent a lot of time with Chet and with Steve. I used to go pick Chet up at his house and we'd go to high school basketball games because his daughter, Jacqueline, went to high school with my oldest daughter, Brooke. And so we spent a lot of time away from the station. And, I'll share some of those stories. And I certainly got, like you do, we got a lot to share when it comes to Philly Billy, because he's still on the radio back in Philadelphia. You and I are frequent guests of his, and we stay in touch with him. But he definitely is one of a kind.
Yeah, very much so. And there were a lot of one of a kind guys.
Yeah,
that were part of that roster of 690 and to a degree the early days at 1090. John Riley, you got a couple social media ones you want to throw here at us?
Yeah, let's take a look here. Just one quick one here from Swellin' Sausage. He said, Hacksaw, how you doing? Been listening to you since XTRA from Southern California Sports Radio, the mighty 690. Before I listened to Jim Healy, he was awesome. And yeah, the Loose Cannons were badass. So
yeah, they were. And the thing John and I have talked off the air, the thing that has made the legacy of 690, we were the first ones through the wall. We were the first ones to do it. Because everybody else, what was here in San Diego was just mom and pop post-game Padres talk. Dave Campbell, who I really liked, he did post-game Padre talk on what was then 760. And LA was post-game Dodger talk and was very successful. But nobody had done what we had done. I mean, on the air from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Right.
Or midnight in some cases, live local sports talk. And so I go back to the original owner, John Lynch, visionary. You want talent, you want content, you need play-by-play, and pal, you need a big signal. And when I came up with the concoction, when I was driving from Phoenix to move over here, my car was packed full and everything I owned. I said, how am I going to do this? And I came up with the idea from Baja to the Canadian Rockies. And that was not BS because he was with me. We were doing Aztec football or at USC. You could hear us in Vancouver at night. You could hear us in Spokane, Washington at night. You could listen. I could listen to him do sports talk radio at night. And then because the signal was so powerful, it skipped. And I told John Riley this. I got a cassette of a guy in Lapland, which is northern Finland, who taped a Charger Rams preseason game. And through all the crackle and static, you could hear me doing live drop-ins for Southwest Airlines during the Charger broadcast. So it was Baja to the Canadian Rockies and beyond.
Well, and the other thing, we didn't have the rules, regular FCC, because, it was a Mexican-owned station, so they didn't have to turn their signal down at night. And, of course, I worked a lot of nights, Lee, and I remember several times getting phone calls from the Pacific Northwest way up there. I remember Rich Burke, who played junior college baseball for me. He most recently was on the Pac-12 network as a broadcaster. He called me one night when he was coming out from doing an Oregon State game up in Corvallis, because he turned on 690 up in Corvallis, Oregon, and it came through. So he gave his old coach a call. It was pretty cool.
And we'll save the story about the guy who called from prison, who was allowed to make one call a week, didn't call home, didn't call his lawyer. He called our damn station to talk to the coach. That'll be another topic for another day. Social media, sound off here, John.
Okay, let's get some social media. There's a good Raiders one in here. You guys always like talking Raiders. Where is it? Here it is. This is from Dave. He says, it's going to get ugly real quick. And I like that they're staying consistent for once, but not having Jacobs and no quarterback is going to get real ugly if they don't start producing W's. Adams might want to come out at the trading deadline.
He's calling from the Raiders Nation. End of the day, they need another Tom Telesco draft. They think, I love their skill people. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, the two young tight ends. I don't know what they have at running back. They keep thinking that this kid from Georgia, Zamir White, is going to replace Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, that's heavy-duty production. Minshew, gunslinger. He can throw touchdowns. He does throw picks, takes way too many sacks, and fumbles the football a lot. Defensively, they're much improved up front. So you got Mad Max, you got Christian Wilkins. They've got Mal Kuntz. I love their linebacking. They think they're better athletically in the secondary, but I think they need another Tom Telesco draft. So for the Raider Nation perspective, what the hell? You don't care. You're going to be drunk. You're not going to pay attention to the game. Just come to the stadium. I think they'll be better. They just got to rein the mistakes and the turnovers, because that's what Minshew does, is make plays and make mistakes along the way. And the coach says,
I think they finish in the cellar of the AFC West. I think Kansas City, obviously the class. I think Denver is going to be even better than the Chargers. I think Chargers finish third, and I think the Raiders finish fourth.
I think the Chargers need another draft, another Ortiz draft, because they still got questions to be answered. But Raider Nation, just remember, I didn't say that. He picked you to finish in last place. John Riley, next social media sound off.
Okay, let's go to the Rams comments here. This is from the People America. It says, legit concerns. McVay has an understanding of offense that could avoid the concerns of the line with a quarterback like Stafford to go 500 a few games, but a whole season is likely a disaster in the NFL. Would love to discuss sometimes. Great questions.
I think the huge question with the Rams is they've lost 3 offensive linemen in preseason. They've not had major injuries 2 years in a row. They got 3 of their 5 offensive guys out. One of them has now just been suspended by the league. At this late date, you can't go find offensive linemen. That's an issue. Puka Nacua has not played in preseason. Knee injury. And, of course, everybody has sealed their lips, won't talk about the extent of the injury. And the tight end, Tyler Higbee, is probably going to start on PUP, if not injured reserve. So they're down in a whole bunch of guys around Matthew Stafford. And by the way, we'll find out what life is going to be like post Aaron Donald. So I'm not going to project that they're going to have a garbage season, because I did that 2 years ago and McVay coached all those kids together. But they went 2 straight years with hardly any big injuries, and this preseason has been just riddled with all kinds of problems.
Well, Lee, let's take a look at their division. They're the second best team in the division, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, the 49ers are the class probably of the NFC this year.
Mhm.
And, I know they're dealing with the Ayuk situation, the Trent Williams situation, but they got a lot of talent there. I think the Rams are number 2, and then you got Arizona and you got Seattle. I don't expect much out of Arizona or Seattle. I mean, the Rams there could be 4 wins right there between those 2 teams.
Yeah. But you're asking Stafford to be able to hang in there with virtually an entire group of offensive linemen pass protecting him who are
Yeah, but
backups.
Sean McVay, you know what? Sean McVay is a good football coach. He's going to come up with a protection. Hey, when you're an offensive coach as good as he is, you have an offense for a team that can block, that can kind of block and can't block at all. Believe me, he will come up with something.
Okay, and there may be trades between now and opening day, which is 10 days away. There were, I think, 3 trades today in the NFL. So there might be some deals for rental free agent linemen, but this lineman situation in front of Stafford really concerns me a great deal. John Riley, next social media sound off.
Okay, let's talk about some of the new pitching rules that were proposed. And this is from Jim. He says, I'm old school and I don't like any of the rule changes. And I mean, let the freaking pitcher hit, pick off, move as many times as you like. Can the pitch timer be related to the number of arm injuries?
Well, those are all valid questions. Old school. So you got a manual typewriter in your garage too, don't you, Jim Daddy? End of the day, I like the pace of play rules. I think it's really helped the game. I don't know that making a guy throw every 18 seconds is the reason of all these elbow injuries and surgeries. I think it's more what they're doing with their pitches, and he can comment about the grip of the ball and the physical force on the elbow, what these guys are now doing in making pitches. It's not the Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz type of pitching. I like the rule changes. I think both leagues need to be the same. I was happy the DH is there. I don't like this quote idea of everybody's got to go 6 innings. And there's a bunch of asterisks there. If you throw more than 100 pitches, you can be pulled before 6 innings. There's too much physical risk to impose that. But I think overall, the rules have been made to improve the game itself. I don't have much of a beef with that, but the 6-inning thing, I think, that's messing with health, and I don't think we can go there. Coach?
I have no problem with the pitch clock because everything got way slowed down. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to be there at a ballpark till 10:15, 10:30 at night on a 7:10 start, okay? Now they're starting at 6:40. Fans can come out, they can take their kids and get home at a decent hour. I have no problem with that. As far as going over to first base only twice, got a problem with that, changing the game. As far as 6 innings, and unless you throw 100 pitches, that's garbage. Let the manager run his own ball club, okay? I'm tired of guys like Rob Manfred and all these people in baseball that sit around a table and they come up with new ideas all the time. Let the guys on the field dictate how the game is played. It's been a great game for 150 years, and the more they tinker with it, the more it's screwing the game up. I mean, I had no problem number one with the shift, but I'm glad the shift isn't in the game now. But really, it came down to a lot of pitchers or hitters, I should say, couldn't make an adjustment. But as far as pitching and injuries, Lee, I mean, that we could talk until the cows come home on that. From the simple standpoint, everybody's got to throw max velocity now. They don't add, they don't subtract. Guys, mechanics, especially guys out of the bullpen, they're throwing 100 miles. They're just trying to throw as hard as they possibly can. When they break down, they just bring in another guy that throws 100 miles an hour. I think, you got to have good 3 good quality pitchers to be a winner in the big leagues. You got guys throwing 5, 6, 7 different types of pitchers. I think that plays into it. But I think more than anything else, guys trying to throw as hard as they can every time they throw a fastball. Not good, and your body isn't made to throw a baseball. It's made to throw a softball, to be honest with you.
And I kept track since the end of February when spring training opened, 53 Tommy John surgeries, either major league pitchers or hot prospects. 53.
Yeah.
That's 14 to 18 months
I'm not
gone.
surprised, Lee. The mechanics are awful. And they train these guys poorly in the minor leagues. They train guys to be tired when they get to about 65, 70 pitches, or if they go 5 innings, they're mentally supposed to be tired. I mean, let guys go out there. The more you throw, the more you're going to build things up, but you can't throw max velocity all the time. You got to add and subtract, and movement's more important than velocity. Any big league hitter worth his salt can hit a fastball.
But the movement is causing the arm breakdowns because the stuff is so wicked and got such bite and jump, but that causes stress here and here.
Yeah, just take a little bit off and sink that ball a little bit better. You don't have to throw 95 miles an hour to get a good sinker.
Take notes. There'll be an exam on this at the end of this podcast. Go ahead. Let's do one more social media.
Okay, let's get a Charger comment here. And this is from Conrad. He says, this team won't even make the playoffs because they have no weapons. Maybe in a year or two, Harbaugh will turn it around.
Well, I'm not sure that I buy that because I think Justin Herbert can make everybody around him better. And they could not keep all those wide receivers and all those linebackers because of the salary cap. I like Josh Palmer. I've seen a little bit different in Quentin Johnston this year, but he's still got to prove it come opening day that he's not going to drop passes. But his route running's become much more precise, crisp. His athletic ability is still off the charts. He's just got to be more consistent. And then we'll see what happens beyond those guys. And they're going to throw to the tight ends, and they will dump and run a lot to J.K. Dobbins. But I think Herbert makes everybody around him better because Herbert is so good and so precise. Have to keep him upright. I mean, he's had 3 major injuries now, all kind of on fluke things, but he got hurt. He's got to stay in the lineup. But I think Herbert is really the keystone of everything else that's going to happen.
I'll tell you, Justin Herbert is, I don't want to say he surprised me, but I guess I'd have to use that adjective more than anything else. I thought he was going to be a pretty good quarterback coming out of Oregon. I didn't think he'd be as good as he really is. And I think this year is going to be interesting because he doesn't have a couple of his weapons that he's had. I mean, losing Keenan Allen was huge. Mike Williams, when he was in there, was productive, but he was another guy that was injury prone. It's going to be a growing year. Like I said, I think they come in third in the division. I think they miss the playoffs this year, but I do think there are going to be some encouraging signs.
This has been fun. I told you this would be fun, John Riley. This has been great, I think, for everybody on our live stream. If you